It looks like Arsenal are going to win the league this season. That's what everyone's saying. Arsenal fans up and down the country. We've won the transfer window. We've bought the left back we want. We've had Declan Rice. We've got the best manager. He's got people pickpocketing around the training ground. He's a genius. Arsenal are favourites, so it all should go swimmingly. Fortunately, the Premier League doesn't work that way. They've got Wolves on the opening day, and I've got a feeling for some Gary O'Neill magic. We need it for the narrative. We do need it for the narrative.
But let's be honest. I know none of us here are Arsenal fans, but over the last couple of seasons, they've proved that they are one of the best teams in the country. Consistent all the time, just getting the results against the teams they should get the results against. And when you don't see them get a result, you're surprised. People remember the Fulham games last season. People remember the Villa games last season because Arsenal don't drop many points anymore. And they've strengthened from a position of strength. Calafiori is a man that was in demand across Europe. They managed to secure his services, and that talks to the pool of Arsenal right now. They've got one of the most exciting projects in Europe, but that needs to be finished off by winning major trophies. And that's where Arsenal are at right now. You can sit there as a City fan and say, we've won it all. We've seen it all. You've won 4 in a row. There's no real pressure to win 5 in a row from fans' point of view. From Arsenal fans' point of view, there's only so much you can say, trust the process, before the process has to pay dividends. And for Arsenal, I think they know that. I think Arteta knows that. That's why he's got pickpockets running around the training ground. That's a very bizarre thing to do to keep the players aware.
Dog last season, man. Yeah. He's doing everything. Every 0.2% he can get through.
But he understands that. And that's what it is the 0.2%, because City are City. City are a machine. But I think Arsenal need that 0.2%, that belief to tell them that they can be champions. If it's not in the league, it's in the Champions League. And I feel like this pre-season has been huge for them. They've not really suffered from injuries over the last few seasons, or last season at least. And so this is the year that they really have to make a run at it and try and assert the dominance from early on. Take on the Wolves side that have been interesting over the last couple of seasons. We all really like Gary O'Neill, but this is a Wolves side that Arsenal should be beating in the first game of the season. And based on what I've seen from Arsenal over the last couple of years, I expect them to do so in a comfortable manner.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they pushed Manchester City to the last day of the season last year, and they've been absolutely incredible, I think, for the last 2 years. We spoke about this. You thought I was joking, or you thought I was doing that thing where I play City down a little bit. I think Arsenal were the best team last year. I think they were incredibly unlucky not to win the league. And you would talk about that sort of 0.2%. Could Calafiori be that 0.2%? They have an incredibly, incredibly strong side now. That back four is probably the best in the league. A lot of the games last season, particularly taking 4 points from Manchester City, will, and hopefully for Arsenal fans, give them the belief that they can now go that extra mile. And, there's like 3 points in it. It's one win. It's a draw. It's one goal in the last minute that separated the title last year. I don't see any reason why Arsenal can't do that this year. For me, they are the favourites. I think they're going to have a lot of pressure on them from the fans. As you mentioned, they trust the process, and the process has been working. Their trust is completely valid in their belief of Arteta and the style of play that he's brought in this winning mentality without having actually won many of the big trophies. The main question mark for me over Arsenal, especially when we talk about this percentage difference, I can't fathom why they're not going out for a striker, an out-and-out goal scorer. That is surely more than 0.2% that could tip Arsenal over the edge.
But I think with Kai Havertz, they probably stumbled across something accidentally last season where, he tried to play him as a left-sided midfielder. It didn't work. And he ended up playing him as a 9. And I think it allowed Saka into the game more, Ødegaard into the game more, and invites Martinelli and Trossard or whoever's playing off the left. But also, if you look at the market, which number 9 are they going to get? Because I don't think he wants to disrupt the rhythm of the team. He keeps talking about good characters, good people. So I think Ivan Toney was previously linked. We spoke about that, and don't think that's his sort of character. Yeah. So I do feel he's pretty strict with how he wants to run it, and it really reminds me of Jurgen Klopp. Although he's definitely more ruthless, he'll get rid of players when he feels like their time at the club is done. I do think they are in the position to win it, and there's a lot of talk about more additions, but I don't think they need anyone else. There is one caveat. They didn't have many injuries to big players last year.
No.
And that is going to play a part this year.
Well, I understand your point about Kai Havertz, but the greatest manager, in my opinion, of all time in Pep Guardiola, won the league with Man City in 21-22 without a striker. The very next year, despite the fact that they won something, which Arsenal have not done, they went and brought in Erling Haaland, which tells you about the importance of having that gunman in front of goal.
But availability is important. Like, who are they actually going to get?
Yeah, and I completely take that point. But if you are Arsenal, and we've talked about it in terms of it being title or bust for them this year, then you need to go and find somebody. You need to go and make moves happen. You need to go and talk to Alexander Isak. You need to go and try and ruffle feathers to try and get these players that you maybe think aren't available. I understand that Julian Alvarez probably wouldn't have been sold from City to Arsenal after City had their fingers not necessarily burnt, but Gabriel Jesus and Zinchenko accelerated Arsenal's progress to this point, despite the fact that they're not key players for them anymore. And I don't think Julian Alvarez would have been sold from City to Arsenal at this point in his career. But I think Arsenal, to make that step and to win those games that they didn't win last season, if you think about the Villa game at the Emirates or the Fulham games, need that striker. And also, Arsenal fans won't like to hear this, I think Declan Rice is an amazing player. And number 6 he is not. If you look at number 6s that really define teams, when Fabinho was doing it for Liverpool, what Rodri does for City, Arsenal haven't got that. Like you saw at the back end of last season, when Thomas Partey was fit, it was Partey, Odegaard, Rice, very, very strong midfield. Can't rely on Partey's fitness. Jorginho played number 6 as a deep line playmaker, but after 4, 5, 6, 7 games in a row, his lack of physicality starts to show. And so Arsenal in the middle of the park have got a little issue there because Declan Rice is not the number 6 they thought he was.
Jurriën Timber. He needs to play, and he has played as a 6 before. The only caveat to that is he's quite small for that position, and Arsenal have a lot of physical players. But I'm not that concerned. I mean, like, obviously we have to look at that team and go, what can they improve? How much closer can they get? But then if you look on the flip side, like look at Wolves' team now. They've probably got 4 areas that they want to improve. They lost Pedro Neto, lost Max Kilman. They've brought in Rodrigo Gomez, Pedro Lima, Tommy Doyle, and Jorgen Strand Larsen. Generally, guys that not many people are going to know a great deal about. So Arsenal have the luxury of their bench is probably better known than some of Wolves' starters. But Gary O'Neill is a top manager. They played gorgeous football last season. And I really think sometimes like managers can really deal with that sort of like setback of losing your best player and get on with it. I think he's that kind of manager.
Yeah, I mean, we were discussing before about Marco Silva and him losing Mitrovic. I feel the same about Gary O'Neill. I feel like in world football, there are certain managers who can do incredible things, but they need the right tools and they need the exact tools. They need. Well, if you want to say Guardiola, that's
I want to hear you say Guardiola.
I'm not going to say Guardiola.
Guardiola said it's Guardiola.
I'm thinking more of like your Ancelotti's, your Antonio Conte. I'm not talking about Guardiola. He can do whatever he wants with any player. I'm sure of that.
He can walk on water.
He can walk on water, that man. But Gary O'Neill, I feel like is a manager who can just deal with any circumstances that are thrown at him. Yeah. And any players that decide to leave. A lot of these players, like you say, who they brought in, Tommy Doyle, a good player from Manchester City, was okay last year on loan. They've decided to make it permanent. And I think he just trusts in the job that he is doing. He trusts in his style of football and he trusts that he can convey that to his players. Of course, losing Kilman and Pedro Neto is going to sting. 2 fantastic players at both ends of the pitch. But again, similarly to Fulham, I just don't think Wolves are going to have any problems this year because I think they have a manager there and they have a style of football that all the players are going to buy into. The fans buy into it. There's a lot of cohesion at that club at the moment, especially considering when he took over from the absolute chaos that was left by Julian Lopetegui. So I think Wolves will be fine. I think this game is too much for them. I think Arsenal away, first game of the season, is not one you really want to be playing. But again, that maybe makes it a bit of a free hit. It takes the pressure off. Let's see what can happen.
It's a really interesting narrative here because if Arsenal don't beat Wolves on the first day, we're talking all about the pressure and how City have handled it and Liverpool have handled it. I do wonder how Arsenal handle this.
This is such an interesting part of the season. So between now, when the season starts, and the end of the transfer window, results can dictate how teams move in the market. If Arsenal don't get a result in this game, and they have a couple of bad games to start the season, they're making the calls and they're making the moves to go and get extra bodies in. And that can sometimes work in teams' favour. Sometimes that can be a bit reactionary. I've seen Chelsea do that before and it's not worked in our favour. And so you expect Arsenal to get the result. I do think there's areas in the team that they can improve. But on the same token, I think that Arsenal is such a good team and so well drilled that they'll get the results against teams like Wolves. It's whether they've got that extra bit at the back end of the season, which you need in the Premier League to really take you over the line. But as for this Arsenal side, I can only look in envy as a Chelsea fan because it's happened very quickly. Everyone likes to make a lot of 8th, 5th, but from 5th to 2nd was a huge jump. And people were wondering, is that a fluke? Is that just a flash in the pan? They lost Granit Xhaka, who was a hugely influential part of that team. Next season, they finished with even more points and finished 2nd again. Is this the year they take the next step? It remains to be seen.
It's funny, isn't it? Because we never really thought that the City-Liverpool era would end. And Arsenal have just shoved Liverpool off that 2nd place. And we all expect them now. We all expect them to be favourites or to come 2nd. We all expect them to be in those top 2 positions. when I speak about Arsenal, I think sometimes I get quite a lot of criticism in the comments because I know there's been like a thing about Arsenal maybe having a weak mentality. I still think that stung them last year. And I don't necessarily mean weak. I just don't think it's an elite title-winning mentality that Guardiola has. And that is the only thing that Arteta probably needs to improve on. I don't know if hiring pickpockets is a solution. I don't know if hiring a big Labrador to walk around the training ground is a solution. But you see it last year against Aston Villa at home. That's a mentality issue. That's not a player issue. And for Arsenal to win the league this year, they're going to have to solve that. I don't know what the solution is, but they're going to have to tweak with that mentality.
I think that's why it improves the defensive side of the team, because you can manage situations defensively. You can manage scenarios, but going forward, you can't. If the ball bounces on the edge of the box and someone stings it 10 yards over the bar, you cannot manage that.
But they had the best defence in the league last season.
Yeah, but he's upgrading again.
But strengthening where you're already strong is the sign of title winners.
Yeah.
Good line. That should be at the top of this episode. Score prediction.
2-1 Arsenal, I think.
I'm going to go 3-0 Arsenal.
I think Wolves have got something for Arsenal.
Give over.
2-2.
No,
I've got a feeling. Opening day drama at the Emirates. Our producer Matt's on his knees in front of his TV going, no! Oh, made me very happy.